The distant stars glimmered against the endless void of space, tiny pinpricks of light that seemed both comforting and mocking to those who lived among them. Humanity had reached for those stars with such hope, only to find themselves relegated to the lowest rungs of an interstellar hierarchy they hadn't anticipated. In the post-Star War era, it was the apex predators who ruled the frontier, species evolved for hunting and killing who had turned those instincts toward domination. Arya Solon stared out the viewport of Research Station Helios, watching the unfamiliar constellations with weary eyes. Her reflection stared back at her, dark circles under brown eyes, skin pale from years under artificial light, and hair pulled back in a practical knot that had long ago stopped being a style choice and had become mere habit. The blue uniform of a human biomedical engineer hung loosely on her frame, deliberately designed to be non-threatening. Non-threatening. The word still made her bristle, even after 3 years stationed at this floating laboratory. Humans, with their lack of natural weapons and relatively fragile bodies, had been classified as lesser beings by the Interstellar Alliance. They were permitted only support roles, medical assistance, sanitation, research assistance, never command, never security, never policy-making. The apex species, those evolved as hunters on their home planets, held those positions. Engineer Solon, a gravelly voice called from behind her. The biosamples in Section 12 require processing. Arya didn't turn immediately. Krell, the station's Mavorian security officer, always demanded immediate compliance through his tone alone. His species, with their armored exoskeletons and multiple limbs ending in serrated edges, embodied the Alliance's preference for naturally armed species. Today, she decided, he could wait 3 seconds for her acknowledgement. Acknowledged, Officer Krell, she finally said, turning from the viewport. I'll attend to them immediately. The Mavorian's compound eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing more as she passed. Arya had learned the fine art of compliance with just enough delay to maintain some sense of dignity. Too much, and she'd be reported. Too little, and she'd lose the last shreds of her self-respect. The corridors of Helios were a marvel of bioengineering, self-healing membranes lined with bioluminescent cultures that provided both light and air purification. Human technology, ironically. The apex species might rule, but human ingenuity had made space habitation possible on this scale. Not that they received much credit for it. Section 12 was the morgue. Human engineers were responsible for processing the dead, another unsuitable job for the predator species, who considered such work beneath them. Death was to be caused, not cleaned up after. Arya entered her access code and stepped into the chilled chamber where 3 bodies awaited processing. 2 human researchers who had died in an accident the previous week, and 1 crystalline diplomat whose crystalline biology had simply reached its natural end. Arya moved methodically through her tasks, her hands steady as she prepared the bodies for their final journeys. For the humans, cryogenic preservation until they could be returned to Earth or one of its colonies. For the crystalline, a specific frequency of sonic vibration that would transform its body into a fine, sparkling dust to be scattered among the stars, per their customs. She was midway through the crystalline preparation when the first tremor shook the station. At first, Arya thought it might be a system malfunction in the gravitational stabilizers. Such things happened occasionally. But when the second, more violent shake was accompanied by the wail of the station's alarm, she knew something far worse was occurring. Attention all personnel. The station's AI announced, its voice unnaturally calm. Security breach in Docking Bay 3. All non-security personnel are to report to designated safety zones immediately. This is not a drill. Arya's heart pounded against her ribs. Docking Bay 3 was directly above Section 12. Whatever had breached the station was literally over her head. The next impact was so severe that it threw her against the preparation table. The lights flickered, then switched to the red emergency illumination. Through the ceiling, she could hear the unmistakable sounds of weapons fire and shouting. Security breach containment failing. The AI updated. Unknown hostile forces have penetrated levels 1 through 4. All personnel evacuate to emergency shuttles in Docking Bay 1. Docking Bay 1 was 6 levels away, on the opposite side of the station. To reach it, Arya would have to cross directly through whatever battle was taking place above her. She hesitated. Section 12 had an emergency supply cabinet with basic survival gear, including a small medical kit. If she stayed hidden, perhaps the danger would pass. But if the station suffered catastrophic damage, she'd be trapped. The decision was made for her when the ceiling of Section 12 cracked open with a horrific screech of tearing metal and synthetic membrane. Arya dove beneath the preparation table as debris rained down, followed by something much heavier that landed with a sickening thud on the floor just meters from her hiding place. Silence fell, broken only by the distant sounds of fighting and the continuous wail of the alarm. Arya held her breath, listening intently for any sound of movement in the room. After nearly a minute of nothing, she cautiously peered out from beneath the table. What she saw froze her blood. Sprawled on the floor of Section 12, amid broken ceiling panels and twisted support beams, was a massive humanoid figure. Not human, far too large, at least 2.5 meters tall, with skin that seemed to shift colors even as she watched. Currently a mottled gray-blue that matched the station's interior. Its body was powerfully built, with 4 muscular arms ending in clawed hands, and a head that featured both mammalian and reptilian characteristics. A broad, flat nose, slitted pupils and amber eyes, and a jaw that extended beyond what should be physically possible, lined with double rows of serrated teeth. A Vorak, one of the most feared predator species in known space, and it was bleeding profusely from multiple wounds across its torso. Arya's training told her to stay hidden. The Vorak were notorious space pirates, apex predators who had rejected the Alliance and operated outside its laws. They attacked research stations and settlements, taking what they wanted and killing indiscriminately. If this one was part of a raiding party, its companions would be slaughtering everyone aboard. But her medical training pushed against her fear. The Vorak was badly injured. Without intervention, it would bleed out within minutes. Despite everything, Arya was still bound by the oath she'd taken when she became a biomedical engineer, to preserve life where possible, regardless of species. Before she could decide, the Vorak's eyes snapped open, those amber slits focusing immediately on her partially hidden form. A gurgling sound emerged from its throat, followed by words in the common trade language. "Human," it rasped. "You hide. Poorly." Arya swallowed hard. "You're injured." A sound that might have been a laugh escaped the creature. "Your observation skills. Impressive." Blood bubbled at the corner of its mouth. "I can help you," Arya said, surprising herself. The Vorak's eyes narrowed. "Why? Would prey help, predator?" It was a fair question. The Vorak viewed all other species as either competition or food. Helping one went against every survival instinct. Yet Arya found herself crawling out from beneath the table, reaching for the emergency medical kit. "Because I'm a biomedical engineer," she answered simply. "And you'll die without treatment." The Vorak made another gurgling sound, but didn't protest as she approached cautiously, kit in hand. Up close, she could see that its injuries were even worse than she'd initially thought. A gaping wound across its chest revealed internal organs that were clearly not in their proper positions. One of its 4 arms was nearly severed at the shoulder. Most concerning was the ragged hole in what appeared to be the primary respiratory organ, causing the bubbling sound with each labored breath. Arya had studied xenobiology extensively. It was required for her position. But Vorak physiology was poorly documented. They didn't allow their dead to be studied, and they certainly didn't volunteer for medical research. What she knew came from scattered reports from survivors of Vorak attacks and the few captured specimens that had died before they could be properly examined. "I need to stop the bleeding," she said, more to herself than to the injured predator. "And stabilize your breathing. Do what you can, human," the Vorak said. "Or, my warriors, will ensure your death is not quick." The threat was clear, but Arya focused on her task. The medical kit contained basic supplies designed for emergency treatment of multiple species: synthetic clotting agents, tissue regenerators, pain suppressants, and a small field surgery unit. None of it was ideal for Vorak biology, but it was better than nothing. She was about to apply the clotting agent to the chest wound when the Vorak's hand shot up with surprising speed, grabbing her wrist in a grip that could easily crush bone. "My name is Kazarek." He said, "Commander of the Void Hunter." He released her wrist. "If I live, I will remember your name." "Arya Solon," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Now please try not to move. I need to close these wounds." For the next several minutes, Arya worked frantically to stabilize the Vorak commander. The synthetic clotting agent seemed to work on his blood, though it required double the standard dosage. She used the tissue regenerator on the most severe injuries, watching in fascination as his body responded by accelerating its own healing processes far beyond what she'd seen in other species. The Vorak truly were remarkable biological specimens, evolved for both hunting and survival. She was so focused on her work that she almost didn't notice when the ceiling axis hole darkened with new figures. Only when she heard the distinctive clicking sound of Vorak communication did she look up to see 3 more of the predatory aliens dropping down into Section 12, weapons drawn. Arya froze, her hands still pressing a regenerative patch against Kazarek's chest wound. The 3 Vorak warriors assessed the scene instantly, their skin shifting to match the red emergency lighting, making them appear as though they were covered in blood. 2 kept their weapons, some kind of energy rifles, trained on Arya, while the 3rd approached and knelt beside the commander. "Commander Xarek," this one said, its voice higher-pitched but still rough. "We feared you lost when the floor collapsed." Xarek's eyes fluttered. "Captain, Kael, the human, is helping." Captain Kael's head swiveled toward Arya, amber eyes narrowing to slits so thin they almost disappeared. "A human helping a Vorak? Impossible." "Yet, here she is." Xarek managed, "Biomedical, engineer." Kael made a sound of disgust. "We should kill her now. Humans cannot be trusted." "No." Xarek's voice suddenly strengthened. "She stays, alive, continues. Treatment." The other 2 Vorak warriors shifted uncomfortably, their weapons still pointed at Arya. Kael seemed to be weighing options, torn between obedience to the commander and distrust of the human. "The commander is delirious from blood loss," Kael finally said. "We will take him back to the ship, our own healers." "Not stable enough to move," Kazarek interrupted. "Let her finish." A tense silence fell over the room. Arya remained perfectly still, all too aware that her life hung by the thinnest of threads. If she made any sudden movements, or if Kael decided to override the injured commander's wishes, she would be dead in an instant. Finally, Kael made a sharp gesture to the other warriors. "Continue securing the station. I will remain with the commander and supervise the human." The warriors hesitated only briefly before climbing back up through the hole in the ceiling. Arya heard their heavy footsteps move away across the level above. "Continue," Kael ordered her, moving to a position where he could watch both her and the room's entrance. "But know that if the commander dies, so do you." Arya nodded silently and returned to her work. Her hands trembled slightly now, the full weight of the situation pressing down on her. She was treating the commander of a Vorak raiding party while the rest of his warriors were likely slaughtering everyone else on the station. Her colleagues, perhaps even her friends, were dying while she saved their killer. But what choice did she have? Even if her conscience would allow her to let Kazarek die, Kael would ensure her death was painful and prolonged. Her only hope of survival was to do exactly what she'd been trained to do: save lives, regardless of who they belonged to. As she worked, the sounds of fighting throughout the station gradually diminished. Either the station's security forces were succeeding in repelling the Vorak, or, more likely, The raiders had overcome all resistance. Arya didn't allow herself to dwell on which outcome was more probable. She focused solely on Kazarek's injuries, one problem at a time. The respiratory damage is severe, she told Kale, maintaining a professional tone. He needs more advanced treatment than I can provide here. Kale's expression was unreadable to her human eyes. Will he survive transport to our ship? Arya considered the question carefully. Not yet. I need at least another hour to stabilize him. And I'll need more supplies than what's in this kit. What supplies? Cal demanded. Synthetic blood compatible with his physiology, stronger regenerative compounds. A portable life support unit would be ideal. She gestured to the wound in Kazarek's chest. His primary respiratory organ is failing. Without assistance, he'll suffocate. Kale was silent for a moment, then tapped a device on his forearm. Ravik, report. A voice crackled from the device. Station secured, Captain. Minimal resistance. 23 prisoners taken. No casualties among our warriors. The medical bay, is it intact? Yes, Captain. Currently being searched for valuable supplies. Bring a medical team to Section 12, lower level. The commander is injured, and find a human medical specialist among the prisoners, one who knows how to operate the equipment. Understood, Captain. Arya felt a surge of hope. If there were prisoners, that meant not everyone had been killed. And if they were bringing another medical specialist, perhaps Dr. Ilana Novak had survived. The senior medical officer was more experienced with cross-species treatment than Arya. Kale turned his attention back to her. Continue your work, human. Help will arrive soon. Thank you, Arya said cautiously. The Vorak captain made a dismissive gesture. Do not thank me. I am not doing this for you. The commander's survival is all that matters. Arya nodded and returned to monitoring Zarek's vital signs. His breathing had become more labored, and the tissue regenerator was struggling to keep pace with the damage. Without more advanced equipment, she would lose him. The next 15 minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by Kazarek's increasingly strained breathing and Arya's occasional murmured observations about his condition. She was becoming genuinely concerned that he wouldn't survive long enough for the medical team to arrive when the sound of multiple heavy footsteps approached from the corridor outside Section 12. The door slid open to reveal two more Vorak warriors escorting a human woman in the white uniform of the station's medical staff. Not Dr. Novak, but Dr. Sarah Lynn, one of the junior physicians. Her face was bruised, and she moved with a pronounced limp, but her expression remained defiant. Behind them came two more Vorak carrying medical equipment that Arya recognized from the station's emergency surgery unit. Her heart leaped at the sight of it. With those tools, they had a real chance of saving Zarek. Dr. Lynn's eyes widened when she saw Arya kneeling beside the injured Vorak commander. Engineer Solon, you're alive! Dr. Lynn, Arya acknowledged with relief. I'm glad you survived. I need your help. The commander has severe chest trauma with respiratory compromise. Lynn hesitated, looking from Arya to the injured Vorak and back again. You're treating him? Voluntarily? Doctor, Kale interrupted sharply. You will assist the engineer in saving our commander, or you will die. Choose quickly. Lynn's jaw tightened, but she moved forward and knelt beside Arya. What have you done so far? She asked, her professional training overriding her obvious reluctance. As Arya briefed her colleague on Kazarek's injuries and the treatment she'd administered, the Vorak medical team set up the equipment they'd brought. Within minutes, they had a field surgical unit operational, complete with monitoring devices and a ventilator modified for Vorak physiology. His respiratory system is failing, Lynn confirmed after examining the commander. We need to repair the primary respiratory organ and clear the fluid buildup. It's similar to a pneumothorax in humans, but more complex due to the multiple air sacs. Arya nodded. Can you perform the procedure? Lynn hesitated. I've never operated on a Vorak before. Their anatomy is classified information in Alliance databases. I have studied human surgical techniques, one of the Vorak medical team said unexpectedly. I can guide you. Arya and Lynn exchanged surprised glances. A Vorak who studied human medicine was practically unheard of. I am Tekvar, chief healer of the Void Hunter. The Vorak continued. Our species do not usually require your primitive methods, but the commander's injuries are severe enough to warrant unconventional approaches. Kale made a sound that might have been disapproval, but didn't contradict the healer. Do what must be done. What followed was one of the most extraordinary surgical procedures Arya had ever participated in. Under Tekvar's guidance, she and Dr. Lin worked to repair Kazarek's damaged respiratory organ, while the Vorak healer monitored the commander's other systems and advised on the unique aspects of their physiology. It quickly became apparent that Vorak medicine operated on fundamentally different principles than human practice. Where humans relied heavily on technology and pharmaceuticals, Vorak healing focused on stimulating the body's natural regenerative abilities, which were already formidable. Tekvar possessed knowledge of pressure points and biological triggers that could accelerate healing, control bleeding, or manage pain. Techniques that seemed almost mystical to the human medical practitioners. Your species views healing as combat against death, Tekvar explained as they worked. We view it as negotiation with the body's own wisdom. Despite the philosophical differences, the combination of approaches proved effective. After nearly 2 hours of intense work, Kazarek's condition stabilized. His breathing eased, the bleeding stopped entirely, and the monitoring equipment showed strengthening vital signs. He will recover, Tekvar announced, satisfaction evident in his gravelly voice. Though it will take time. Arya sat back on her heels, exhausted but relieved. Dr. Lin looked similarly drained, wiping sweat from her brow with a shaking hand. Kale, who had remained a silent, watchful presence throughout the procedure, stepped forward. Can he be moved to our ship now? Tekvar considered this. Yes, but carefully. I recommend a stasis field for transport. Arrange it. Kel ordered one of the other Vorak, who immediately left to carry out the command. Then, to everyone's surprise, he turned to Arya and Dr. Lin. You have both proven unexpectedly useful. Coming from a Vorak, it was high praise indeed. What happens now? Arya dared to ask. To us and to the other prisoners. Kale's expression shifted, his skin rippling with patterns that Arya couldn't interpret. That will be for the commander to decide when he awakens. Until then, you will be kept alive and unharmed. He paused, then added, Consider it. Professional courtesy. It wasn't much of a reassurance, but it was better than immediate execution. Arya nodded, accepting what little guarantee of safety she could get. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Kazarek was carefully moved into a stasis field and transported to the Vorak ship, which Arya learned was docked at the very bay where the initial breach had occurred. She and Dr. Lin were escorted to a secure room near the station's medical bay, which had been converted into a temporary holding cell for the valuable prisoners, those with skills the Vorak might find useful. There were 8 others in the room. Dr. Novak, who had indeed survived. 3 security officers who had surrendered rather than been killed. The station's chief engineer, and 3 research scientists whose work the Vorak apparently found interesting enough to preserve. Reunions were tearful but brief. Everyone was exhausted, frightened, and uncertain of their fate. Dr. Novak treated those with injuries using the limited supplies the Vorak had permitted them to have, while Arya and Dr. Lin recounted their experience treating the Vorak commander. You may have saved all our lives, Dr. Novak said quietly after hearing their story. If the commander survives because of your intervention, he might show mercy. And if he doesn't? One of the security officers asked bitterly. We're dead anyway. No one had an answer to that. They were left alone for nearly 12 hours, provided with water and basic rations, but no information about what was happening on the rest of the station or aboard the Vorak ship. Sleep came fitfully, if at all, for most of them. Arya dozed off briefly, only to jerk awake from nightmares filled with amber eyes and blood-covered claws. It was during one such restless moment of wakefulness that the door to their holding cell slid open. Captain Kale entered, flanked by 2 warriors. His posture seemed different, less aggressive, though no less alert. "Engineer Solon," he called, "come with me." Arya rose unsteadily to her feet. Dr. Lin grabbed her hand. "Where are you taking her?" Lin demanded. Kale ignored the question. "Dr. Lin, you will come as well. The rest will remain here." Exchanging nervous glances, Arya and Dr. Lin followed Kale out of the holding cell. They were led through corridors that showed signs of the recent battle: scorched walls, damaged panels, dark stains that Arya tried not to look at too closely. Eventually, they reached Docking Bay 3, where the Vorak ship was attached to the station. Arya had never seen a Vorak vessel up close before. It was an intimidating sight, a dark, angular craft that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its surface was textured in a way that reminded her of shark skin, and she wondered if it served a similar purpose of reducing resistance during space travel. "You will board our ship," Kel informed them. "The commander has regained consciousness and wishes to speak with you." That was unexpected. Arya had assumed they wouldn't see Kazarek again until he was fully recovered, if ever. "Is that good?" Dr. Lin whispered to her as they approached the airlock connecting the station to the Vorak ship. "I hope so," Arya whispered back. "Either way, I don't think we have a choice." The interior of the Void Hunter was both familiar and alien. The basic layout followed standard spacecraft design principles: corridors, compartments, control centers. But the materials and aesthetics were utterly foreign. The walls seemed almost organic, with subtle patterns that shifted and moved as if alive. The lighting was dim by human standards, but tinged with amber hues that Arya realized must be optimized for Vorak vision. They were led to what appeared to be the ship's medical bay. Unlike the sterile, equipment-filled environment of a human medical facility, this space was minimalist and contained few recognizable devices. Instead, there were shallow pools of luminescent liquid, strange crystalline formations growing from the walls, and areas that seemed designed for specific body positions rather than for housing technology. In the center of this unusual healing space lay Commander Xerek, his massive form resting on a slightly elevated platform. His skin had changed from the mottled gray-blue of the station to a deep, almost metallic green that Arya assumed must be his natural coloration. His forearms were arranged carefully at his sides, and his breathing, while still labored, was much more regular than before. "Commander," Kale announced, "I have brought the humans as you requested." Kazarek's amber eyes opened slowly, focusing first on Kale, then shifting to Arya and Dr. Lin. "Leave us, Captain. Post guards outside if you must. But I would speak with these humans alone." Kale seemed about to protest, then thought better of it. With a sharp nod, he withdrew, the door sealing behind him. For a long moment, Kazarek simply studied the two humans, his expression unreadable to their eyes. Finally, he spoke. "You saved my life, Engineer Solon. You as well, Dr. Lin. This creates a complication." Arya swallowed nervously. "A complication, Commander." Kazarek shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. "In Vorak culture, to save a life is to claim responsibility for it. By your actions, you have created a bond that cannot be easily severed." Dr. Lin frowned. "I'm not sure I understand." "It means," Xerek explained with surprising patience, "that I cannot order your deaths without violating one of our most sacred principles, nor can I allow others to harm you." He paused. "It is inconvenient." Arya felt a flutter of hope. "Then, what will happen to us? And to the others?" Kazarek was silent for a moment, seemingly gathering his strength. "That depends on what you can offer the Void Hunter and its crew. We did not attack your station randomly, Engineer Solon. We came for specific research, data on biological weapons being developed for use against non-alliance species, including my kind." Arya exchanged a startled look with Dr. Lin. "Biological weapons? There's no such research being conducted on Helios. We're a xenobiological study station, not a weapons development facility." Kazarek's eyes narrowed. "Our intelligence suggests otherwise. The Alliance has been developing targeted pathogens designed to incapacitate Vorak biological systems for the past 3 years. Traces of these pathogens were detected in shipments originating from this station. Dr. Lin shook her head emphatically. That's impossible. I've had access to all medical research on Helios. And there's nothing like what you're describing. Unless, Arya said slowly, a horrible suspicion forming. It was being conducted without the knowledge of the general staff. She looked at Kazarek. Section 8 has been restricted for over a year. Only Alliance military personnel are permitted entry. We were told it was for weapons testing, conventional weapons, not biological. Kazarek's expression changed subtly. Interesting. Your ignorance appears genuine. He shifted again, grimacing. This changes the parameters of our mission. We came expecting to eliminate a direct threat to our species. Instead, we find pawns who know nothing of the game they're playing. We're not pawns, Dr. Lin protested. We're scientists and medical professionals. If what you're saying is true, we've been deceived as well. Arya placed a restraining hand on her colleague's arm. Antagonizing the Vorak commander, no matter how justified, wouldn't help their situation. Commander Xerek, she said carefully, if there are indeed biological weapons being developed on Helios, we had no knowledge of it. But now that we do, perhaps we can help you confirm whether your intelligence is accurate. Xerek studied her with those unsettling amber eyes. And why would you do that, human? Help us against your own kind? It was a fair question, and one Arya had been asking herself since she first decided to treat the injured Vorak. Why risk everything for a species known for violence and predation? The answer, when it came, surprised her with its simplicity. Because biological warfare is forbidden under Alliance law for good reason. If such weapons are being developed here, it violates everything I believe in as a medical professional. She straightened her shoulders. And because you're right, I saved your life. In human culture, that also creates a bond. I wouldn't have worked so hard to keep you alive only to let you die from a manufactured disease. Kazarek was silent for a long moment, then made a sound that might have been laughter. You are unusual for a prey species, Engineer Solon. He turned his gaze to Dr. Lin. And you? Do you share this perspective? Lin hesitated, then nodded firmly. I do. The Hippocratic Oath isn't species-specific. First, do no harm applies to all sentient life. Admirable sentiments, Kazarek said, though whether he was being sincere or sarcastic was impossible to tell. Very well. You will assist us in investigating Section 8. If your claims of ignorance prove true, and if the intelligence we received is verified, your lives and those of your fellow prisoners will be spared. It was the best offer they were likely to get, and Arya knew it. Thank you, Commander. When do we begin? Immediately, Xarek declared, attempting to rise from the platform. The movement clearly caused him pain, though he tried to mask it. Commander, you're not healed enough for that. Dr. Lin protested, her medical training overriding her fear. You need at least another day of rest before... I have rested enough, Xarek growled. This matter cannot wait. Arya stepped forward, taking a risk that made her heart pound. Commander, please. Your injuries are severe. If you reopen the wounds we just closed, all our work will be undone. She hesitated, then added, let Captain Kale lead the investigation. Dr. Lin and I will assist him, under guard if necessary. You can monitor from here until you're stronger. She braced herself for an angry response, but Kazarek merely regarded her thoughtfully. You speak boldly for a human facing a Vorak commander. I speak as your doctor, Arya replied, surprised by her own confidence. And doctors are terrible at respecting rank when their patients are being foolish. To her astonishment, Kazarek made that laughing sound again. Very well, Engineer Solon, your medical advice is acknowledged. He tapped a control on the platform beside him. Captain Kale, attend me. The door slid open almost immediately, suggesting that Kale had been waiting just outside. He entered, gaze sweeping over the scene with obvious suspicion. Commander, you will lead an investigation of Section 8 with these humans as guides. Find evidence of biological weapons research. Report directly to me with your findings. Kazarek's tone left no room for argument. Kale's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on resigned acceptance. As you command, and if we find nothing, then our intelligence was flawed, and we must reconsider our approach to the Alliance. Kazarek's eyes narrowed. But I do not believe that will be the case. Neither did Arya, though for different reasons. If the Alliance military had indeed been developing biological weapons on Helios, right under the noses of its civilian staff, it represented a betrayal that went beyond mere deception. It undermined everything the Alliance claimed to stand for: peaceful cooperation between species, ethical scientific advancement, mutual protection. But those were concerns for later. Right now, their immediate survival depended on finding the truth in Section 8. Kale led them back to the station, accompanied by 4 Vorak warriors armed with what appeared to be both conventional weapons and specialized scanning equipment. The journey through the corridors was tense and silent. Twice they passed areas where station personnel had clearly been killed during the initial attack. Their bodies removed, but the evidence of violence still present. Arya forced herself not to look too closely, focusing instead on what lay ahead. Section 8 was located in the lowest level of the research wing, isolated from the rest of the station by multiple security checkpoints. Under normal circumstances, Arya wouldn't have been able to access even the outer door. Now, with the station systems compromised by the Vorak invasion, those security measures were meaningless. The main entrance to Section 8 was a massive airlock designed for full decontamination protocols. It stood open, the control panel beside it dark and inactive. Someone has already been here, Kale observed, gesturing to the disabled security systems. Your warriors, Arya suggested. Kale shook his head. We secured the station, but we're waiting for the commander's orders before investigating restricted areas. Then who? Dr. Lin asked, voicing the question they were all thinking. They got their answer as soon as they entered the main laboratory space of Section 8. The large chamber was in disarray, equipment destroyed, storage units emptied, computer terminals smashed beyond repair. Most telling were the scorch marks on walls and floors, evidence of someone systematically destroying all traces of whatever research had been conducted here. Alliance military, Kel growled, examining the destruction. They triggered a purge protocol when we breached the station. Arya moved carefully through the debris, looking for any clue as to what had been studied here. Most of it was unrecognizable now, but her trained eye could still identify certain pieces of equipment: gene sequencers, viral incubators, biological containment units. All the necessary tools for advanced pathogen research. They were developing biological agents here, she confirmed grimly. This equipment has no other purpose. Dr. Lin had made her way to a partially intact computer terminal and was attempting to access any remaining data. Most of the files are corrupted or deleted, but there might be backup systems or physical records somewhere. One of the Vorak warriors called out from an adjacent room. Kale moved quickly to investigate, returning moments later with a small, secure case. Physical samples, he announced, his tone a mixture of triumph and disgust. They missed this in their purge. The case was locked with a biometric seal, designed to open only for authorized personnel. Under normal circumstances, it would have been virtually impossible to breach without the correct genetic signature. But these were not normal circumstances. And the Vorak had come prepared. One of the warriors produced a device that attached to the case's locking mechanism. After several tense minutes, during which the device cycled through various biochemical compounds, the lock disengaged with a soft click. Kale opened the case carefully. Inside were 6 vials of clear liquid, each labeled with a seemingly random alphanumeric code. Beside them was a data crystal, a storage medium used for particularly sensitive information. We need to analyze these, Arya said, examining the vials without touching them. But not here. We should take them to the main laboratory where the equipment is still intact. Kale nodded in agreement. Tekvar should examine these as well. His knowledge of biological agents is extensive. They transported the case to the station's primary research laboratory, which had been largely spared from damage during the Vorak attack. There, they were joined by Tekvar, who had left Kazarek's side only after ensuring the commander was stable. The analysis took hours. Arya and Dr. Lin worked alongside Tekvar, each bringing their specialized knowledge to the task. The data crystal proved to be the most valuable find, while heavily encrypted. The Vorak had technology capable of breaking through the security measures. What they discovered confirmed their worst fears. It's exactly as we suspected, Tekvar announced gravely. These are prototype pathogens designed specifically to target Vorak physiology. They attack our unique respiratory system and regenerative abilities, turning our greatest strengths into vulnerabilities. Arya studied the molecular structure displayed on the screen. It's ingenious in a horrible way. The pathogen remains dormant until it encounters the specific enzyme Vorak produced during healing. Then it activates and begins systematic destruction of tissue. A weapon designed to be most effective against the wounded, Dr. Lin observed with disgust. It violates every ethical principle of medical science. Kale's expression had grown increasingly dark as the analysis progressed. How far along was the development? Are these weapons deployment ready? Tekvar shook his head. Not yet. According to these records, they were still in the testing phase. The samples we found are prototypes, not final versions. Small comfort, Kel growled. They would have perfected them eventually. Arya continued examining the data, a terrible realization forming. This research, it uses biological samples collected from Vorak prisoners. That's how they were able to target your physiology so precisely. The implications were clear. Somewhere, the Alliance was holding Vorak captives and experimenting on them, another violation of their own laws and principles. We must take this evidence to the commander. Kel decided. He will determine our next course of action. As they prepared to return to the Void Hunter, Arya found herself torn between conflicting loyalties. On one hand, she had sworn oaths to the Alliance, the organization that had educated her and given her a position on Helios. On the other hand, she had just discovered that the same organization was secretly developing horrific weapons and experimenting on prisoners, actions she could never condone, regardless of the target. And then there was Commander Xarek, the Vorak leader whose life she had saved, creating a bond recognized by both their cultures. What did she owe him? What did she owe herself and her own principles? By the time they reached the Vorak ship, Arya had made her decision. It wasn't an easy one, but she believed it was right. Xarek had been moved from the medical bay to what appeared to be his personal quarters, a spacious chamber that served as both living space and command center. He was sitting upright on a raised platform, still clearly in pain but determined not to show weakness. His coloration had improved, shifting from the sickly green of before to a deeper, more vibrant blue. "Report," he commanded as soon as they entered. Kel presented their findings concisely, displaying the data they had recovered and explaining the nature of the biological weapons. Xarek listened in silence, his expression growing harder with each new detail. When Kale finished, Xarek turned his amber gaze to Arya and Dr. Lin. "And what do you humans make of this? Your alliance, developing such weapons against a species they claim is too dangerous to be reasoned with?" Arya stepped forward. "What they've done is unconscionable. Commander, it violates not only alliance law but basic ethical principles that transcend species boundaries." She paused. "But I would ask you to remember that not all humans, not all alliance members, knew of or would approve these actions." "A convenient claim," Xarek observed coldly. "But a true one," Dr. Lin interjected. "Would you hold all Vorak responsible for the actions of a rogue commander? The same principle applies here." Xarek considered this. "What would you have me do, then? Ignore the threat these weapons pose to my people. Leave the Alliance to perfect their biological attack at another facility?" "No," Arya said firmly. "I would have you expose them." The room fell silent. Even Kale seemed taken aback by her suggestion. Expose them? Xarik repeated, clearly intrigued despite himself. Arya nodded. The Alliance Council would never sanction biological weapons research. It goes against their founding principles. If evidence of these programs were presented publicly, those responsible would be held accountable. You place great faith in your leaders, Engineer Solon. Not in leaders, Arya corrected. In systems of accountability. In the collective moral conscience that exists in all intelligent species. She took a deep breath. And I'm willing to help you present this evidence, to testify about what we found here today. Dr. Lin stepped up beside her. As am I. Xarik studied them both for a long moment. Why would you betray your own kind this way? It's not betrayal, Arya said quietly. It's loyalty to principles over organizations, to truth over convenience, to justice over species. She met his gaze steadily. The same loyalty I showed when I chose to save your life rather than let you die. Something shifted in Xarik's expression, a subtle change that Arya couldn't quite interpret with her limited understanding of Vorak facial expressions. But his next words suggested that he had reached some kind of decision. You continue to surprise me, Engineer Solon. Perhaps there is more to humans than we have been led to believe. He straightened, wincing slightly at the movement. Very well. We will present this evidence to the Alliance Council, and you will help us do so. Kale made a sound of protest. Commander, this is unprecedented. Taking humans aboard our ship, approaching Alliance space voluntarily. Many things about this situation are unprecedented. Captain. Xarik interrupted. Including humans saving a Vorak commander's life at risk to their own. He turned his attention back to Arya. We will need to move quickly, before the Alliance realizes what we've discovered and takes steps to silence us. Arya nodded. What about the other prisoners? They will be released here, once we've departed. Xarik decided. With sufficient supplies to survive until Alliance rescue arrives. He paused. Consider it. Professional courtesy. It was the best outcome Arya could have hoped for. The station personnel would live. The biological weapons program would be exposed. And perhaps, just perhaps, this incident could lead to a better understanding between humans and Vorak. But she knew the path ahead would not be easy. By choosing to accompany the Vorak and testify against an Alliance Black project, she was potentially sacrificing her career, her citizenship, perhaps even her freedom. Dr. Lin was making the same sacrifice, a fact that filled Arya with both gratitude and guilt. As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Lin placed a hand on her shoulder. We're doing the right thing, she said softly. Whatever happens. Arya nodded, taking comfort in her colleague's solidarity. Whatever happens, she agreed. The next few hours were a flurry of activity as the Vorak prepared to depart. The remaining prisoners were gathered and informed of their situation. They would be left on the station with emergency supplies and a functional communication system to signal for help once the Void Hunter was safely away. Most seemed relieved just to be alive, though a few regarded Arya and Dr. Lin with suspicion when they learned the two women would be leaving with the Vorak. You're collaborating with them? Chief Engineer Torres asked incredulously. After what they did to the station? To our people? We're pursuing justice, Dr. Lin replied firmly. Once you see the evidence from Section 8, you'll understand. Dr. Novak, however, seemed to grasp the situation more intuitively. This is about the restricted research, isn't it? The military section that none of us were allowed to access. Arya nodded. They were developing biological weapons, Doctor. Weapons that violate every principle the Alliance claims to uphold. Novak's expression hardened. I always suspected something unethical was happening down there. The power consumption patterns, the specialized equipment deliveries, the military personnel who wouldn't speak to any of us. She squeezed Arya's hand. Do what you must, and know that not all of us will condemn you for it. Those words stayed with Arya as she and Dr. Lin boarded the Void Hunter, escorted by Captain Kale. They were assigned quarters near the medical bay, small but comfortable spaces that had clearly been adapted hastily for human occupancy. The lighting had been adjusted to human visual ranges, and the environmental controls modified to maintain a temperature and humidity level suitable for their physiology. "You should rest," Kale advised them. "The journey to the Alliance Council facility will take approximately 3 of your Earth days. The commander wishes to speak with you both when you've recovered from your ordeal." Arya was indeed exhausted. The events of the past 24 hours had drained her physically and emotionally. But her mind was still racing with questions and concerns. "Captain Kale," she said as he turned to leave, "may I ask you something?" The Vorak captain paused. "You may ask, I may not answer." Why did the commander insist on keeping us alive, even before he knew about the biological weapons? He could have ordered our deaths despite the cultural taboo against killing those who saved his life. Kale was silent for a moment, considering his response. "Commander Xarik is unusual among our kind. He believes that the path of pure predation, of viewing all other species merely as prey or competition, is ultimately self-defeating." The captain's tone suggested he didn't entirely share this perspective. "He has long argued that the Vorak must evolve beyond our biological imperatives if we are to secure a permanent place in the galactic community." "That's a progressive view," Dr. Lin observed. "Not what we've been taught about Vorak philosophy." "It is not a popular position," Cal acknowledged. "Many Vorak, including some on this ship, consider it weakness. But the commander's success in battle has earned him the right to his unconventional ideas." He turned to leave again, then added, "Rest now. You will need your strength for what lies ahead." Alone in her assigned quarters, Arya finally allowed herself to process everything that had happened. She had gone from routine biomedical duties to saving an enemy commander's life, discovering a secret biological weapons program, and now agreeing to testify against her own government, all in the span of a single day. The magnitude of her choices weighed heavily upon her. Had she done the right thing? Was she betraying her species by siding with the Vorak? Or was she upholding higher principles that transcended species boundaries? Sleep claimed her before she could resolve these questions, her exhausted body overriding her troubled mind. She awoke an unknown time later to a soft chime from the room's communication system. A gravelly Vorak voice, not Kale's or Kazarek's, informed her that the commander requested her presence in the medical bay. Concerned that Kazarek's condition might have worsened, Arya quickly made herself presentable and hurried to the medical bay. She found the commander there, but not as a patient. He was standing, somewhat unsteadily, but standing nonetheless, beside one of the strange crystalline formations that seemed to serve some medical purpose. "Commander," she greeted him, surprised by his rapid recovery. "Should you be on your feet so soon?" Kazarek made that sound she now recognized as laughter. "Your concern is noted, Engineer Solon, but Vorak physiology is remarkably resilient, especially when properly supported." He gestured to the crystalline formation. "These growth accelerators stimulate our natural regenerative abilities. Combined with your initial treatment, they have expedited my healing considerably." Arya approached the formation cautiously, her scientific curiosity overcoming her lingering fear. "Fascinating. Is it some kind of biologically responsive crystal?" "In simple terms, yes. It resonates with our cellular structure, encouraging rapid division and specialization." Kazarek watched her examination with what appeared to be amusement. "Your interest in Vorak medical technology is unexpected." "I'm a biomedical engineer," Arya reminded him. "Cross-species medical applications are literally my field of study." Kazarek nodded thoughtfully. "Which brings me to why I summoned you. I have been reviewing the evidence from Section 8 more thoroughly." His expression darkened. "The Alliance researchers were attempting to reverse engineer aspects of our regenerative abilities while simultaneously developing ways to neutralize them." "That makes sense from a tactical perspective," Arya admitted reluctantly. "Your healing abilities give you a significant advantage in conflict situations." "Indeed. But what interests me is not their strategic thinking, but the fact that they failed." Kazarek began pacing slowly, his movements still somewhat stiff but improving visibly. Their approach was fundamentally flawed because they understand so little about our biology. They were working from limited samples, with no Vorak cooperation. Arya frowned, not quite following his line of thought. I'm not sure I understand the implications. Kazarek stopped pacing and fixed those amber eyes on her. The implications, Engineer Solon, are that knowledge, truly comprehensive knowledge, cannot be stolen or extracted. It must be shared willingly. He paused. Which is why I'm proposing a formal exchange of medical information between our species. The suggestion was so unexpected that Arya could only stare at him in shock. An exchange between humans and Vorak? Precisely. Not between the Alliance and the Vorak Collective. Those political entities are too entrenched in their mutual distrust. But between individual practitioners, scientists to scientists, healers to healers. Kazarek's expression was intense, almost fervent. Beginning with you and Tekvar. Arya struggled to process what he was suggesting. Commander, while I'm honored by your proposal, I'm just one biomedical engineer. I don't have the authority to establish such an exchange. But you have the knowledge, the skill, and most importantly, the willingness to see beyond species divisions. Kazarek countered. You have already demonstrated that by saving my life when others of your kind would have let me die. He was right about that, at least. Arya had crossed a line when she chose to treat him, a line that separated blind allegiance from ethical autonomy. But what he was proposing went much further. Such an exchange would be unprecedented, she said cautiously. Many things about our current situation are unprecedented, Kazarek replied, echoing his earlier words to Captain Kyle. Perhaps that is precisely what both our species need, a break from established patterns, a new approach to old conflicts. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. To have access to Vorak medical knowledge, to understand their remarkable regenerative abilities and unique physiology, it was a scientist's dream. And yet, the political ramifications could be severe. The Alliance might view such cooperation as treason, especially coming on the heels of exposing their secret weapons program. What exactly are you proposing? Arya asked, wanting to understand the full scope of his idea. Initially, a simple exchange of basic medical information, anatomical details, physiological processes, healing techniques. Nothing that could be weaponized by either side. Kazarek moved closer, his massive form looming over her but somehow no longer seeming threatening. In time, perhaps collaborative research, joint studies on regenerative techniques that could benefit both our species. And where would this exchange take place? The Alliance would never permit Vorak researchers on their stations, and I doubt your people would welcome humans aboard your ships for extended periods. Kazarek's skin rippled with patterns that suggested satisfaction. That is another matter I wish to discuss with you. There are neutral territories, places where neither the Alliance nor the Vorak Collective hold sway. Independent colonies, research outposts established by consortium interests rather than governmental ones. You have one in mind, Arya guessed. I do. A research facility called the Nexus, located in the Verge system. It was established by a coalition of independent scientific organizations with the express purpose of facilitating cross-species research outside political constraints. Kazarek paused. It is also where we will be taking our evidence of the Alliance's biological weapons program before proceeding to the Council. Arya hadn't expected that. I thought we were going directly to the Alliance Council. That was the initial plan. But upon further consideration, I believe presenting our case to neutral scientific authorities first will strengthen our position. The Nexus administration includes respected figures from multiple species. Their endorsement of our findings would make it much harder for the Alliance to dismiss the evidence. It was a sound strategy, Arya had to admit. And the existence of this Nexus facility opened possibilities she hadn't considered before. A place where scientific exchange could occur outside the boundaries of species politics. It was an intriguing concept. Commander, she said slowly, your proposal is fascinating, but I need time to consider it. This isn't a decision I can make lightly. Kazarek inclined his head in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. Of course, consider it carefully. Engineer Solon, discuss it with Dr. Lin if you wish. But know that the offer stands regardless of your decision about the biological weapons testimony. That surprised her. You're separating the two issues? They are separate issues, Kazarek stated firmly. Your willingness to expose the Alliance's violations is a matter of justice and principle. The medical exchange is a matter of scientific advancement and potential cooperation. One should not be conditional upon the other. It was a distinction that impressed Arya. Many would have used the weapons evidence as leverage to force her cooperation on the medical exchange. Kazarek's willingness to separate them suggested a level of ethical thinking she hadn't expected from a Vorak commander. Thank you, she said sincerely. I will consider your proposal carefully. Kazarek nodded. That is all I ask. Now, you should return to your rest. Despite my recovery, Tekvar informs me that you humans require more frequent recovery periods than we do. Arya couldn't help but smile at that. He's right. Though I suspect you should be resting more than you are, Commander. That laughing sound again. Perhaps we both have something to learn about proper recovery protocols. As Arya returned to her quarters, her mind was awhirl with possibilities. The medical exchange Kazarek proposed could revolutionize both human and Vorak medical science. The potential benefits were enormous, if they could overcome the political obstacles and deep-seated mistrust between their species. And what of her own future? If she testified against the Alliance's biological weapons program, her career within Alliance institutions would likely be over. But perhaps that wasn't the end of her scientific journey. Perhaps it was the beginning of a new one, at this Nexus facility or somewhere similar. She found Dr. Lin in the small common area between their quarters, examining what appeared to be a Vorak medical text displayed on a holographic projector. Tekvar provided it, Lin explained when Arya joined her. Basic Vorak anatomy and physiology. He said it was a gesture of good faith. That's significant, Arya observed, taking a seat beside her colleague. The Vorak are notoriously secretive about their biology, which makes this all the more remarkable. Lin gestured to the holographic display, which currently showed the complex respiratory system they had worked so hard to repair in Commander Xerek. Their evolutionary adaptations are fascinating. Multiple redundant systems, cellular regeneration rates 10 times that of humans, adaptive immune responses that can rewrite themselves in real time to combat new pathogens. No wonder the Alliance was trying to develop targeted weapons against them. Arya murmured. Conventional approaches would be largely ineffective. Lin gave her a sharp look. That doesn't justify what they were doing. No, of course not. Arya agreed quickly. I meant only that I understand the strategic thinking, not that I condone the methods. She paused. Kazarek just proposed something extraordinary to me. She outlined the commander's suggestion for a medical knowledge exchange and his mention of the Nexus facility. As she spoke, she could see Dr. Lin's expression shift from skepticism to cautious interest. A neutral research facility, Lin mused when Arya had finished. Outside Alliance jurisdiction, but with sufficient scientific credibility to be taken seriously. She shook her head in wonder. It's an elegant solution to a problem I didn't know could be solved. You think it's viable, then? Arya asked, valuing her colleague's opinion. Viable? Yes. Easy? Absolutely not. Lin leaned back, considering. We'd be pioneers in more ways than one. The first humans to engage in formal scientific exchange with the Vorak. The first to blow the whistle on an Alliance Black project of this magnitude. We'd face resistance from both sides. Those in the Alliance who want to maintain human supremacy, and those among the Vorak who view all other species as inherently inferior. But if it worked, Arya pressed, if we could establish even a limited exchange of medical knowledge, the benefits could be enormous. Lin acknowledged. Vorak regenerative techniques adapted for human patients. Human precision medicine approaches applied to Vorak health issues. She smiled suddenly. And on a personal level, It would be the most fascinating research opportunity of our careers. Arya returned the smile, feeling a growing sense of possibility. So you'd consider it, if the opportunity arose? I would, Lynn confirmed. Though I suspect our colleagues back on Helios might question our sanity. Some would, Arya agreed. But others, like Dr. Novak, might understand. She thought of Novak's parting words to her. Do what you must, and know that not all of us will condemn you for it. They spent the next several hours discussing the potential challenges and opportunities of Kazarek's proposal. The more they talked, the more viable and exciting it seemed. By the time they finally retired to their separate quarters to sleep, Arya had all but made up her mind. The remaining 2 days of the journey to the Verge system passed in a blur of activity. Once Kazarek was sufficiently recovered to resume his duties as commander, he invited Arya and Dr. Lin to participate in preparing their presentation of the biological weapons evidence. They worked alongside Tekvar and a Vorak communications specialist named Vrel to organize the data in a way that would be compelling to the multi-species scientific committee at the Nexus. Arya also spent time with Tekvar, beginning the tentative exchange of medical knowledge that Kazarek had proposed. To her surprise, the Vorak healer was forthcoming with information, answering her questions about their physiology and medical practices with remarkable openness. In return, she shared insights about human medical techniques, particularly those that might be adapted for treating injured Vorak in emergency situations. It was during one such exchange that Tekvar made an observation that stayed with Arya long afterward. Our species have been defined by our differences for too long, the healer said as they discussed comparative neuroanatomy. Predator and prey, hunter and hunted, strong and weak. But in the realm of healing, those distinctions become meaningless. All bodies seek homeostasis. All cells strive to repair damage. All beings wish to avoid suffering. A universal principle of medicine, Arya agreed. The desire to heal transcends species boundaries. Tekvar made a gesture she had come to recognize as affirmation. Perhaps that is why medical knowledge is the ideal beginning point for greater understanding between our kinds. It speaks to needs we all share, regardless of our evolutionary origins. By the time the Void Hunter arrived at the Verge system, Arya had made her decision. When Commander Xarek called her to his quarters to discuss final arrangements for their presentation at the Nexus, she was ready with her answer. I accept your proposal for a medical knowledge exchange, she told him without preamble. And if the opportunity arises, I would be interested in continuing that work at the Nexus facility after our testimony is complete. Kazarek's skin rippled with patterns she now recognized as pleasure or satisfaction. I am gratified by your decision, Engineer Solon. Dr. Lin has expressed similar interest. She has? Arya hadn't discussed her final decision with Lin yet. Indeed. She approached Tekvar this morning with her answer. Kazarek studied her with those unsettling amber eyes. You humans continue to surprise me with your capacity for adaptation and your willingness to transcend boundaries. I could say the same about you, Commander. Arya replied honestly. When I first treated your injuries, I never imagined we would be discussing scientific collaboration. Life is full of unexpected trajectories. Kazarek observed philosophically. The true test of intelligence is how we navigate those unforeseen paths. Their arrival at the Nexus facility marked the beginning of yet another unexpected chapter. The facility itself was impressive, a massive structure built into an asteroid at the edge of the Verge system, far from the political centers of any major species. Its design incorporated architectural elements from multiple cultures, creating a space that somehow managed to feel both alien and welcoming to all who entered. The scientific committee that received their evidence was equally diverse. 2 humans, neither of whom Arya recognized, a Mavorian, a Crestaline, and 3 species she had never encountered before. They listened in solemn silence as Kazarek presented the evidence of the Alliance's biological weapons program, with Arya and Dr. Lin providing supporting testimony about the discovery in Section 8. The committee's reaction was everything they had hoped for: immediate concern, thorough examination of the evidence, and a commitment to launching a formal investigation. The human members seemed particularly disturbed by the revelations, one of them openly condemning the actions of the military research team as a betrayal of everything the Alliance claims to stand for. In the days that followed, as the committee's investigation unfolded and preparations were made to present their findings to the Alliance Council, Arya found herself drawn deeper into the scientific community at the Nexus. The facility housed researchers from dozens of species, all working collaboratively on projects that transcended political boundaries. It was everything the Alliance claimed to be but had failed to become, a true meritocracy of ideas, where contribution mattered more than species of origin. When the committee chair, a human scientist named Dr. Eleanor Voss, approached Arya about the possibility of remaining at the Nexus to establish a formal human-Vorak medical exchange program, it felt like the culmination of a journey she hadn't known she was on until Kazarek fell through the ceiling of Section 12. Commander Xeric has already expressed his support for the initiative, Dr. Voss explained. He's nominated Tekvar as the Vorak lead researcher. We would be honored if you would consider serving as the human counterpart. What about Dr. Lin? Arya asked immediately. Voss smiled. She's already accepted a position in our xenopathology department. The two of you would work in complementary fields, collaborating where appropriate. It was an opportunity beyond anything Arya could have imagined when she first boarded Helios 3 years ago. A chance to pioneer a new field of cross-species medical research, to bridge a gap between predator and prey that had seemed unbridgeable. I would be honored, she told Dr. Voss. The formal announcement of the Human Vorak Medical Exchange Initiative came 1 month later. Following the Alliance Council's public acknowledgement of the illegal biological weapons program and its commitment to dismantling all such research, the scandal had sent shockwaves through the political establishment, leading to multiple resignations and a comprehensive review of military research protocols. Kazarek attended the announcement ceremony, his imposing figure drawing stares from the assembled scientists and dignitaries. When it was his turn to speak, he surprised everyone by beginning with a personal anecdote. 1 month ago, I lay dying on the floor of a station morgue, my life bleeding out from wounds sustained in battle, he told the hushed audience. By all rights, the human engineer who found me should have let me die. I was her enemy, an invader, a threat to her and everyone she knew. His amber gaze found Arya in the crowd. Instead, she chose to save my life, at great risk to her own. When my warriors found her treating my wounds, they would have killed her without hesitation had I not intervened. In that moment, something unprecedented occurred. A human and a Vorak, working together to preserve life rather than take it. Kazarek extended one of his forearms, gesturing to encompass the entire facility. This initiative builds upon that singular moment of connection. It recognizes that while our evolutionary paths have been different, our fundamental needs are not. All beings seek health. All beings wish to avoid suffering. All beings deserve the benefits that come from shared medical knowledge. His final words remained with Arya long after the ceremony concluded. Perhaps, in learning how to heal each other, we will also learn how to live together, not as predator and prey, but as partners in the greater project of life itself. As she prepared to begin her work at the Nexus, coordinating with Tekvar and the team of researchers who had volunteered for the exchange program, Arya reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought her here. From a routine assignment on Helios to the forefront of interspecies medical collaboration, all because she had wrapped her arms around a dying apex predator, and in doing so, changed the course of history. The path ahead would not be easy. Centuries of mistrust could not be erased by a single act of mercy or a formal scientific initiative. There would be resistance, setbacks, perhaps even sabotage from those who preferred the old divisions. But for the first time in her career, Arya felt that she was doing exactly what she had been meant to do, using her medical knowledge not just to heal bodies, but to heal the rifts between species. And it had all begun with a choice: to see beyond the fearsome exterior of a predator to the wounded being underneath, to recognize that life, in all its forms, was worthy of preservation, to reach out with healing hands when others would have reached for weapons. Sometimes, Arya reflected as she entered her new laboratory at the Nexus for the first time. The most revolutionary act was not destroying an enemy, but saving one.